Rescue me from every evil, and save me for his heavenly kingdom. Alleluia. 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 The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 10th chapter. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus and his disciples came to Jericho. And as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, rise, he is calling you." And throwing off his mantle, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Master, let me receive my sight." And Jesus said to him, "Go your way. Your faith has made you well." And immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Grace, peace, and much joy to you, people of God. St. Mark's Gospel has been called a passion story with a long introduction. And today we hear the climax of the introduction. It's the last healing in Mark's Gospel. Jesus and his disciples have almost reached the end of their journey. They're almost at Jerusalem. Jericho is only 15 miles or so to the northeast of the Holy City. You will recall that when Jesus and his disciples began this trip, when St. Mark begins his travel narrative, there's another healing of a blind man, the blind man of Bethsaida. That healing happens just before Peter's confession and Jesus' first passion prediction that we add back on September 12th in the lectionary. The blind man of Bethsaida, Jesus takes him aside and he anoints his eyes with saliva and he lays hands on him and he asks him, "What do you see?" And he says, "Well, I see men, but they look like trees walking." Jesus lays hands on him again and then he sees clearly. Now the healing of blind Bartimaeus begins with Jesus and his entourage passing through Jericho on the way to Jerusalem. And as they go, they pass by this blind beggar, Bartimaeus. But he has heard of Jesus. And his hearing has brought forth faith. And so when he hears that Jesus is passing by, believing that Jesus can heal him, he cries out for mercy. "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Now, this is the first time that Jesus has been addressed with a messianic title since Peter's confession back in chapter 8. The Son of David, that's David's royal offspring. God promised that David's offspring would sit on his throne forever. That's the Messiah, the Son of David. And this is what Bartimaeus calls Jesus. The blind man sees what so many others do not. The unseeing crowd, of course, tries to hush him, but he's persistent. Son of David, have mercy on me. He's heard of Jesus. He hears Jesus is passing by. Now Jesus hears him, stops, and says, call him. Call him. And the crowd says, he's calling you. Come on. And he throws off his cloak. Not off his back, off his lap. A beggar in the first century spreads his cloak on his lap. That's where the coins that people flip at him get caught, and he gathers them up, and maybe has enough to eat that day. Bartimaeus throws aside his cloak. So much for the day's takings. And he's blind. Who knows if he'll ever even find his cloak again? Faith, not fear. He comes to Jesus, and Jesus asks him the very same question that he asked James and John in last Sunday's gospel when they asked for that blank check. Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask you. Jesus responds, what do you want me to do for you? Bartimaeus doesn't want a place of glory. He says, Master, let me receive my sight. I want to see. It's a longing for the right path. And he actually doesn't say master. That's epistata. That's a Luke word. He says Rabboni, which is actually the very same thing that Mary Magdalene says to the risen Jesus on Easter morning when he says, why are you weeping? And calls her by name. Rabboni, my teacher. My teacher, the blind man says. Let me receive my sight. And he is healed with a word. Not the complicated and gradual healing of the blind man from Bethsaida. That's at the beginning of this trip, as Jesus is trying to open the eyes of his disciples to who he is and the path he's on and what it means to follow him, the meaning of discipleship. Now here's Bartimaeus, who's already demonstrated faith, not fear. And Jesus says, go your way. Your faith has made you well. Now you already know what I'm going to say. That's sesoken from the verb sozo. Your faith has saved you, is what Jesus says. Saved by faith. Healed with a word. What Jesus always says to those he has healed, go your way. But Bartimaeus does not go his way. This is not just a healing story. This is a call story. I adduce as evidence verse 47. Jesus says, call him. They called him. Take heart, he's calling you. In one verse, it's a call story. Because of Bartimaeus' response. He doesn't go his way. He immediately follows Jesus on his way. The last shall be first. And this last healed person in Mark's gospel is the model disciple. He follows Jesus on his way in faith, not fear, Not fear of the crowd trying to hush him, not fear of the cross that awaits Jesus, not fear of the persecutions that Jesus has promised await everyone who leaves everything and follows Jesus. We are all blind beggars by the side of the road, asking for mercy. We start every liturgy with our little litany, Lord, have mercy. All of us are looking for our sight. We'd like to find the right path. Jesus offers us the light that will show us how we might follow him on his way. In the 19th century, John Henry Newman wrote the hymn, "Lead Kindly Light," which says, "Lead kindly light amid the encircling gloom." And it doesn't ask for much light, just enough light to see the next step. The next step for Jesus is his entry into Jerusalem and the beginning of the great and holy week that will end with the cross and the empty tomb. The next step for us is Reformation Day, when we will explore a little more what it means to be saved by faith. And to all of us, Jesus says, take heart, rise. I'm calling you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.